Hey Dethroners, welcome back to another episode of the Dethroning Your Inner Critic YouTube channel. I am Joanna Kleinman, psychotherapist and CEO of the Dethroning Your Inner Critic coaching company. And today I want to talk to you about how your inner critic created your winning strategy for your life. Now, each one of us has a personal strategy for our life. So this strategy is how people think of you. It's really what people know you to be out in the world, okay? It's really what works for you in your life. So some examples of your winning strategy might be your sense of humor, or your determination, or your kindness, or being smart. For me, it's being enthusiastic and playful and spontaneous. Now, don't get me wrong. These are wonderful qualities, right? So your winning strategy, whatever it is, it's a wonderful quality, okay? But what's interesting about each of our winning strategies is that when we really understand where this strategy first came from, what we can see is that there are parts of this winning strategy that are actually holding us back and keeping us in a cycle of dissatisfaction. So let me explain what I mean, okay? So our winning strategy for our life is actually automatic. We didn't choose it. It was developed when we were children, because in some way we benefited from this part of our personality. We learned very early on, like maybe between the ages of 4 and 12, that this part of our personality helps us to manage times when we feel that in some way we're not enough, we're bad, or something's wrong. So then that becomes an automatic way of being in our life and out in the world that we come to depend on, okay? Feels like it's a positive part of ourselves, okay? And in some ways it is, but it was actually developed when we were children to compensate for just that feeling that there's something wrong. And that is why we're never fully satisfied. We're never fully fulfilled. We never feel like we're really nurtured when we're using that winning strategy to try and feel good, to try and feel successful, to try and feel fulfilled. So, for example, making money can be a winning strategy, okay? Being successful, right? And it could have started before you started making money. You had really good grades, or you were, the top of your class. Again, these are not bad things to be doing in your life, right? To be making money, to be really smart. But if you need to make money in order to feel okay, if you need to be the smartest person in the room, if you need some sort of quality about yourself and you need people to think and feel that way about you so that you can feel valued or enough or important or that you matter, okay? That's where your winning strategy could actually be bankrupt, okay? If you don't recognize the underlying reason for, let's say, needing to make money or needing to be smart, right? You could have a lot of money in the bank, but you're never going to feel fully satisfied or fulfilled or valued. And so when we're using this winning strategy in our life, we are never satiated. It's never enough. We need more and more and more. So the fundamental issue here is that as human beings, we're so used to trying to overcompensate for that feeling that in some way we're not enough or we're unworthy. Now, we have memories from our past that we use to hold on to that sense of unworthiness, okay? And sometimes our unworthiness or our not enoughness is the very thing that fuels our so-called success, okay? But there's a cost to that. So we have so many unconscious fears and doubts that are really at the heart of how we all operate in our life. And being aware of your hidden fears, your hidden doubts, your hidden insecurities, being aware of them in your life and how they govern your life gives you tremendous power and freedom. So, it's not enough to really read about them. You really have to get a real grip on them and understand where they show up, who triggers them, what triggers them. Where specifically are you still using these winning strategies to try to sort of calm that inner fear that you might not even know is continuing to operate, okay? And specifically knowing your winning strategy, why you use it, where it came from, that is what creates ongoing transformation. It creates growth, and it really creates living a conscious life. Okay. So I can explain how my winning strategy shows up in my life. Okay. I became enthusiastic, optimistic, playful at a very young age because that was how I felt loved by others, right? When I was enthusiastic or optimistic or playful, right? I got a lot of attention for that. And by the way, I do have a lot of love in my life as a result of being enthusiastic and optimistic and playful. Okay. So it's just like your winning formula, your winning strategy for your life has given you a lot. You probably have a lot of success in your life that came from your winning strategy. Okay. But when we dig below the surface, right, I can see that it does not matter how loved I am. I still have this underlying fear deep down that I won't be loved. And it's not real. It's a story that my inner critic mind created a long time ago. And then the way that I overcompensated for that was to make sure that I'm always playful and I'm always optimistic and I'm always enthusiastic. But guess what? That's not real life. Okay. So before I knew how to distinguish my inner critic self from my true authentic self, I was constantly feeling that deep-seated lack of fulfillment, not being at peace, always trying to make sure that I was always valued and always loved and everybody thought that I was good enough, okay? I was always looking for that next way to feel loved. And it didn't matter. It didn't matter how successful I was. It didn't matter how many people thought I was fabulous, right? So if your strategy is, let's say your strategy is being smart, no matter how many times in your life that people have said you are brilliant, you may be automatically seeking more and more ways that you can feel smart, and you may be feeling unfulfilled in your life when there is nothing circumstantially in your life that is making you feel smart. Okay. So we keep feeling that underlying sense of lack of fulfillment because we keep looking for the next thing outside of ourselves. Now, if I didn't see this blind spot, I would have been caught in a vicious cycle, okay? Because what happens is when we don't know that this is the winning strategy that we're using, we keep using it over and over and over. Now, you've heard this before. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting different results. And this is how many human beings, in fact, most human beings operate, is that they are blind to this winning strategy and they keep using it over and over and over again because at one point in their life, it worked, but it's not working so well anymore. And until we see that we're caught in a vicious cycle, we will keep using those same strategies and then wonder why we keep feeling like we can't get out of this cycle that we've created for ourselves. Okay. So the biggest breakthrough comes from understanding how to be present in the moment when you are feeling that inner discomfort, okay? Instead of getting caught in your head, okay? And most people don't even know that they're caught in their head, okay? So when we feel that initial discomfort, what happens is our minds go to the same old thoughts, old beliefs, old stories, old fears. And then we get caught in our head in these thought loops that basically we've been repeating over and over and over again for as long as we can remember, but we don't recognize that it's the same thought loop. Because when we were 15, right, it was about, that we weren't asked to the dance by little Joey, okay? And when we are 35, it's about the fact that we didn't get that promotion. Same thought loop, but we can't recognize that there's a link between old memories of our past and our current emotions. Okay. So we don't even know how much old stories, old fear, old insecurity is really running every part of our life, including the parts in our life that are actually considered successful. So when you can recognize your inner critic at play here, you can then interrupt needing to rely on that winning strategy for your fulfillment. Okay. Again, I love my enthusiasm. I love my playfulness. I will not stop having that as part of my personality, but I no longer automatically use it to overcompensate for feeling unloved and unworthy. I can put those feelings right here and I can see them for what they are. I know when they're triggered. I know they're not real. Okay. And that's what allows me to stop trying to find my worthiness, my lovability, my enoughness out there outside of myself. Now, before I did my inner work, I had no idea that I was doing this. Okay. That's what I love about this work. Because when you can fully accept all parts of yourself, because you can clearly see where all of your fear and doubt and insecurity has come from, you stop letting your automatic mind run your life. You stop trying to succeed in life by dominating something or someone or forcing or striving, or keep thinking that feeling of fulfillment and peace and joy comes outside of yourself and comes out there in the future. Okay. So, when we talk about loving ourselves is actually more about allowing all of our human stuff, our fear, our anger, our doubt, our arrogance, our laziness, right? Whatever it is, to keep allowing it, to keep being willing to see it, to keep being willing to acknowledge it, and to keep expanding our ability to be with all of it, especially the emotions that are uncomfortable, because those are the emotions that are going to teach us and show us the most about ourselves. So allowing all of those parts of your being, your anxiety, your sadness, your loneliness, and being the witness the watcher of that part of you, that's how you create the space within yourself to really see the wholeness of your identity, right? The wholeness of that old identity that you've been mistaking for the real you. So having confidence, having fulfillment, having joy, it's really not about learning to love yourself more. It's about learning how to accept yourself more, to understand yourself more. That is where confidence comes from. The ability to fully understand the darkest parts of yourself that maybe you haven't wanted to see. So as a child, we develop certain emotional feelings that, despite the fact that these feelings are a part of our natural state, we learn that they're not acceptable. Okay, we learn early on from our parents or our teachers that it's not okay to get angry. Okay, we learn that putting ourselves first, that's not okay. That's selfish. We learn from peers or siblings that if you fully express yourself, well, you're going to get made fun of. That's not safe. Okay, so some of these parts of our personalities, we don't even know why we have them. We can't even remember the memories that created them in the first place and the stories that we made up in our heads as a result of those memories. Okay. So the result of some of our feelings of unworthiness or inadequacy, or whatever it is that you're facing, it's really a result of our socialization. And most of us do not come through our childhoods unscathed in some way, shape, or form. So in a way, you could see that at this moment, right now, your personality is in a way built upon the way that our society has dealt with our impulses as children. Okay. To be socially acceptable in our world, we're usually left with a feeling that somehow I'm bad, that I have these parts of myself that are not acceptable. Okay. So then you build your life around that personality that was created through the lens of these parts of me are unacceptable. And what you often end up with is a personality that's looking for the world, for other people to make you feel okay. So we don't even recognize we've got these underlying questions that we're constantly trying to get the answers to, and they're really unanswerable questions. Okay. Questions like, do you approve of me? Do you like me? Am I good enough? Am I acceptable to you? Have I achieved enough? Okay. Think about those questions for yourself, right? You've had plenty of people that have approved of you, plenty of people that have loved you, plenty of people that have valued you, that think you're good enough, that you are more than acceptable to them, that you've achieved wonderful things. And yet you can probably see that there are still those areas where those questions get triggered and you have some discomfort about wondering whether you are approved of or liked or valued or good enough or acceptable, right? And how this gets reinforced is that when we do get that validation, right? When we do get that A for effort, okay, we feel good. And then if we don't get that validation, we feel bad. And then the baseline of our life is, always trying to get back to feeling good by getting those things that our inner critic really craves, right? The approval, the love, the acceptance, the validation. Okay. So Do you hear this issue that I'm talking about? So we're constantly using our life experiences as a way to disprove that basic negative feeling about ourself that was created by our automatic mind. That's the mind of our inner critic. And that's the way most of us are going through life. And mostly, if we're looking at traditional forms of coaching, psychology, people are really trying to undo this, okay? So there's a lot of emphasis on positive aspects of yourself or positive aspects of your life or positive affirmations or even gratitude for certain parts of your life. And don't get me wrong, those are wonderful things, but we're never getting rid of the inner critic's narrative. Okay. So right behind those times where we're seeing the good and we're seeing the positive parts of our life and we're seeing the positive parts of ourselves, right behind that is our inner critic's automatic lens where she's going to find evidence to support that we're not enough and we're not okay. And this is where the spiritual dimension becomes very important, okay? That's the part of us that can just look at life and see exactly the way that it is, instead of adding our automatic stories, meaning to everything that happens in our life, okay? So if you don't value yourself, if you have self-doubt, and by the way, who doesn't, okay? You might be automatically seeking the answer to the question, how do I love myself? How do I stop having self-doubt? But here's the thing. There's no such thing as how do I find love for myself? How do I get rid of my self-doubt? How do I have more confidence? These are not things to get. We don't get self-love out there. We don't get rid of our self-doubt. We don't get more confidence. So the only path to these things is to be able to clearly see, hear, and identify your automatic inner critic judgments, your inner critic's expectations, your inner critic's demands, all your inner critic's shoulds and supposed to's that live inside your head that you've been trying for your whole life to figure out ways to overcompensate or to stop the judgments or to meet your inner critic's expectations or to live up to all the shoulds and the supposed to's. That's the key to all of our suffering and struggling. And when you can clearly see, hear, and fully understand how your personality and your current identity was formed by that automatic inner critic lens, now you've created some space between you and that identity. That's your inner critic identity. Now, most people who I work with come into my programs or I work with one-on-one. I hear this all the time. They say they don't know who they are because they've been listening to that identity, that personality that was created so long ago, and they didn't even know that they were stuck in a way of seeing themselves in their lives that was created in their childhood. Now, you don't have to go back and rehash your childhood and dig deep, okay? You can see it right here in your present life. And this is why most of the world tends to act like adolescents at best when they're triggered into pain, okay? Most people act even younger than adolescents. Right? When we are triggered by something in our life, a fight with a partner, a child who isn't meeting our expectations, a mediocre performance review at work, not making the money that we want to make, the list can go on and on. Okay. If you don't know that you are triggered into an old inner critic story that's triggering you into an old part of your personality that's reacting to that circumstance, you're going to show up at the level that story was created. Okay. You may turn into a little girl or a little boy in front of your own eyes. Okay. And that's why most people want to find a solution outside of themselves. Okay. So a solution outside of yourself might be, well, I'm just going to work way harder. I'm going to work 15 hours a day, or I'm going to go on this diet and I'm going to work out 6 days a week, or I'm going to go for that promotion, even though I work at a company where I really am unfulfilled. But I think if I get that promotion and I can make more money, that's going to make me feel the way I want to feel. And none of this ultimately works. So when we're not seeing ourselves through a different lens, in which we stop judging ourselves and finding all those ways that we're still not good enough, and then trying to find those solutions, we've got to interrupt that as an automatic, habitual way of being. So it's kind of like we want to walk through our life the way we walk through a forest. You know, when we walk through a forest and we look at the trees, we're just being with the trees. We just appreciate the trees. We don't say, oh, that tree is good, but that tree is bad. And this tree is thin, but that tree is fat. And this tree is really tall, but this tree is short. And that one's bent. Oh, but this one's straight. We're just with the trees exactly as they are. And we appreciate them exactly as they are. But the minute we get around other humans, we immediately go into judgment mode because it's automatic and unconscious. We judge all the time. In fact, we're judgment-making machines. And what drives that judgment, whether it's judgment of ourselves or it's judgment of others, or if it's judgment of the way life is supposed to be and it should be and it's not, what drives that is all of our inner critic's insecurities and that constant need that our inner critic has, where we are looking to reassure ourselves. So if you pay attention to your inner critic mind, you'll hear all of your judgments. Am I a good enough mother? That woman is prettier than me. I need to be a better leader for my team. I need to make sure that my boss sees me as worthy. My partner doesn't appreciate me. See, we're blind to understanding really how to disentangle ourselves from those automatic judgments, demands, shoulds, supposed tos that our inner critic perpetuates all day, every day. So instead of learning how to appreciate all of ourselves, we get embarrassed or ashamed about certain parts of ourselves. And then we want to bury those parts, right? But the things that we're ashamed of or embarrassed by, all of those parts are the same parts that all humans have. But our inner critic doesn't see that. See, our inner critic just judges that part of ourselves and then starts comparing ourselves to some idealized version of who we should be and what our life should be. And then we go even further to think that there's other people out there that are actually living that idealized life. And there are other people that are actually that idealized version that we have in our minds, right? So we don't even recognize that we're trying to be something that it's not just that we can't measure up to be, it's that nobody can measure up to be because it's created by our inner critic mind. So we judge ourselves, we judge others, and that makes us feel separate and cut off from each other. because we're not being authentic. You can't have an authentic, vulnerable, and deep connection with somebody else if you are automatically trying to bury your shame and hide your fear and your doubt and your insecurities. And that's why so many people are just going through the motions of life and continuing to feel so unfulfilled, so disconnected, so unhappy. So as we learn to allow ourselves to be a whole human being, allowing all of those parts of ourselves to show us where we are continuing to hold on to judgment, inadequacy, feeling not good enough, that's exactly how we start to shift our life from the inside out. That's how our judgment and our lack of self-acceptance and our lack of confidence falls away quickly, because we see that we've been trapped in an old identity that we've mistaken for the truth, that's rooted in feeling like no matter who we are and no matter what our life looks like, it's not good enough. So once we see and fully accept all of ourselves, especially the parts we're blind to, that's when we can really see the change occurring in ourselves, in our lives. And the ripple effect is that it actually changes the people's lives who are connected to us, right? Because we're changing our energy. We're able to get into the internal energy of flow, of peace, of calm, of balance, of fulfillment, instead of the energy of struggle. So if you want to learn more about this, I have some very exciting news. On March 11th, I'm going to be doing a 5-day masterclass on confidence called Building Confidence from Within. So if you are interested in registering, it is only $36 for the whole masterclass. We're going to be meeting 5 days in a row for an hour a day. If you're interested in registering, you can go to dethroningyourinnercritic.com/building confidence from within. And I hope to see you there. Thanks for listening today.